about that. There's a third party to this problem that has caused so much suffering.
It's the only court that has field workers.
What if they just deny that part of themselves, which I've seen?
The International Criminal Court is what it's trying to do is to protect human rights, and the U.S. didn't ratify the Rome Statute.
In most civil law countries, the victim or victims have standing in the judicial process. They are recognized by their society as having a guaranteed standing in the process.
The International Criminal Court is the first court ever that has a victims' trust fund. In other words, it goes beyond just the speaking for the victim.
What does it do for an individual, the violated child, the raped woman, the mutilated man, the survivor who has seen a loved one brutally murdered? What does it do for them simply to have their state shamed, perhaps, or sanctioned into stopping this? There has to be some form of redress. And here we reach a question of justice, which is really extremely interesting. The court punishes. And I'm often told when I talk to people that, what's the use of a court that punishes people when there can't be a punishment that is in any way proportionate to what the victims have suffered? What has to happen is some form of redress or redemption, which allows them to go forward with their lives, although all of these things have happened to them. That makes it possible for them to function in a society that contains the groups that so badly traumatized them in the past. What the court does by the process of trial and by conviction is not determining an appropriate punishment, which is impossible. What the court does is to deal with what Elie Wiesel told us was the greatest torment that victims often suffered. He has said that greater even than the torment that the victims suffered at the hands of the oppressor is the torment suffered by seeing that nobody seems to care. That there is no authoritative statement that what happened to you was wrong. There's nothing on behalf of your community that says human beings don't behave this way. What you have suffered is the consequence of behavior that is beyond the human pale. The court does do that in its very limited way. A trial of a person brings out the story, proclaims to the world what it was that happened, and says to the victim, we can't restore you, we can't compensate you, but we can tell your story, and you can know from the slam of the door of the jail on this person that your community has recognized what has happened to you and has condemned it in no uncertain terms.
Me, myself, I am a formerly incarcerated person. Right? I came up during the Vietnam era. My heroes was the guys that came back disgruntled and upset and disappointed because they served this country and they came back and there was no reward for them. So they turned to what they knew best. They knew how to survive in the jungles of Vietnam. So they came back to the United States, survived in the streets of America. And they grabbed up little small guys like myself and taught us how to survive in the streets. As a consequence, I went to the penitentiary. I stayed incarcerated for 32 years because of that. I went to the system when I was 17 years old because I learned what America's heroes learned in Vietnam. Society tells me that people like myself is given a second chance. But since I've been out of incarceration, every time where I turn, there's always someone there to remind me that, you just came from incarceration, therefore we're not allowing you to rise above certain stations because you have a stigma and you have a label, and we're going to constantly remind you of that. So what do we do about ensuring people who's coming home who actually want to do the right thing, who are actually walking the walk, instead of just talking the talk, ensure them that they will get the opportunity and the chance to live life on life's term?
I know that the LRA leader in northern Uganda has been indicted, and I'm grateful for that. But I am not grateful for the fact that it has taken so long to get him under wrap and to relieve the pains and sufferings of people who have been in camps for the last 24 years. And nobody seems to know what is going on. And the ICC law, which seems to be more written in the Western style, does not seem to bend and probably work together with the cultural and the African cultural understanding of restorative justice, which is in my cultural group. And I'm sure that there's been a lot of presentations of that particular issues to the ICC, but it seems as if they've turned a deaf ear to that. So I really would like to appeal to those in leadership of ICC to really take a second look about the conditions of people in northern Uganda.
I also wanted to address this aspect of the psychopathological person. And, there is much that our science really needs to examine of our own lack of understanding about the human mind and the workings of the human mind and the dysfunctions of the human mind. And so we really have to try to see how the convergence of science and judicial systems and the values that are shaped because of our own ignorance and lack of understanding as to how to deal with the fractured mind also needs to be improved. So, and to see the convergence of how our lack of understanding really does shape our values that can often re-victimize people that we don't understand.
And so long as we remember that we are inherently spiritual beings, then therein is the hope for all of us that we will be able to not overcome our global challenges, but be able to overcome them in ways that will speak to our infinite capacity to love and to have compassion and caring for each other.